Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here today for the last session. So my name is Omri, and I am Vice President of Business Development at ironSource. And for those of you who are not familiar with ironSource, we actually connect people and apps. We do it on all devices, on all platforms, basically providing effective data-driven distribution and monetization solutions for fellow developers. We've been around for 4 years, and the company grew from 0 to 500 employees, so we are quite global. We just raised close to $100 million in a pre-IPO round. And I just talked to our HR expert, and she mentioned that we're actually recruiting 1 person a day these days. So you can imagine that being involved in such a massive operations, I get exposed to a lot of exciting projects from M&A, team buildings, and product development. But today I want to share with you insights from a project that was very dear to my heart, and that's the building of our Chinese operation. And I hope to share with you some insights that will help you when you're going to bring your business to China, because it's definitely worth at least 15 minutes of talk and understanding before you approach this market. So about a year and a half ago, I bumped into an article that says that China is about to take US as the largest market for mobile games in the world. Until then, I was told and thought that China is kind of the next thing, but I quickly realized that it's not the next thing, it's this thing. So I made my homework, dive into the numbers a little bit, and here you can see kind of an overview of the internet, the global internet on the left side, on the global internet market. And you see that out of these 6 giants in terms of market valuation within the internet section, you can actually find 3 Chinese companies. We call them BAT. Stands for Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. By now, you're all familiar with them. Back then, they were kind of less, they were below the radar a little bit. In China, each one started from one sector, but gradually, as you can see on the right side, they are kind of taking over each one products or core products. They're not only doing it in China, what they're doing right now, today, actually they are planning how they're gonna conquer the world, and we already start to see sign of this company actually going overseas and taking over other markets. So we took the first plan to China and start to interact with potential customers, and we soon realized that China is very, very different. So it starts with kind of basic concepts of life. We prefer our women to be kind of tanned and dark skin. Chinese prefer them a bit white and pale. But it's go deeper than this, right? When you start to interact on a business level, the first thing I remember that was kind of staggering for me is the importance of the CEO. Assuming that you in the West has kind of a very good value proposition, you assume that you can very, very quickly go and make things done. In China, it's a bit different. You rather make it to the top, and you rather make it to the top very fast. These are the ones that actually takes the bold decision and can make things move faster. So it has, on the flip side, once you reach to the top, then you know you made it. It continues to communication. We have WhatsApp. We use it usually for private life. In China, it's like dating. When you meet with the perspective from the business community, how you know you had a good meeting? If at the end of the day, he takes out his phone, he asks for your WeChat ID, right? And he scan it, and then you are connected on WeChat. And it's kind of common that you will talk with him also when you have crisis and you will deal with problems. It's very common to develop this type of style of communication. And it goes on and on. I'm not going to jump to all the, we have Google, they have Baidu, we have Amazon, they have Alibaba, et cetera, et cetera. But with all these differences in mind, we understood that it will be very, very hard and complex to operate in China from the outside. So what we did actually is to open the first office in China. And today, 6 months or more afterwards, I'm very proud to inform you that it kind of make 15% out of our revenues of the company. It's coming from China. So it was definitely paid off. All our employees, besides the manager, are local Chinese. Okay, we were thinking at the time to do some relocation for other employees, but definitely make an operation that is entirely based on Chinese local employees. And we have a growing list of potential partners. This kind of took us to the next level in terms of understanding the market. And here are some insights that might be interesting for you as app developers. A bit of the China ecosystem. So the bad news that if you are kind of a service utility or dating app, most chances that you won't make it into the Chinese market. This is heavily relied on local publishers. It's very hard to penetrate. You look at the charts, it's almost a big no. But if you're a game developer, we have quite a few examples. It's not the vast majority yet of big brands that actually made it to the charts in China. A few of us, the most successful ones are Temple Run and Rovio, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And I'm going to take you through what they've been doing in order to succeed. I guess the first thing is to understand that also from a consumer perspective, Chinese are different. So not necessarily a game that go very well in Brazil or in US will have the same popularity, enjoy the same popularity in China. Most likely, if you have role-playing games or strategy or trading card games, most likely you will be more successful. At the same time, it's important to remember that even if you capture 2% of the market, so you can do quite well. Now let's talk a little bit about operating system. So you can see here that clearly Android dominates the market. That's kind of, I find it a bit awkward considering the fact that Google is forbidden in China and is not a valid player. By the way, there are rumors that Google is planning their coming back, but for the time they are out of the game, Google Play. And that leaves a place for what we call alternative stores. Now, I saved from you a very noisy slide that describes all these stores. We have more than 300 stores in China, okay? Most of the power is concentrated within the top 3 here. Baidu, which started as a search engine, but also now on a very big app store. Qiu, which started as an antivirus and browser company. And Tencent, which owned WeChat, which is kind of the combination of WhatsApp and Facebook, the Chinese Facebook. If you get to these guys, most likely you will cover at least half the portion of the market. But don't give up on the small players, because sometimes you'll find niche players that can, for specific games, they are the best one to go with. Now let's talk a little bit about business. So if you submit your application to the store, most likely you will go with the standard 70-30%. That won't get you anywhere, don't worry. The next phase is that actually if you want to get promoted on the stores and be featured on them, then you will have to kind of train your negotiation skills. And most likely you will get it upside down. If you get 30% as a rev share, then you're excellent negotiators. I know very big companies that made it to 20%. That's mostly because part of the chunk goes to the store, and then another chunk goes to mobile payments, either Chinese carriers, China Telecom, etc., or either separate payment methods that they have, and they are related or connected in an agreement with the store. We arranged a few meetings between Chinese and Israeli developers, and they got a proposal of 10%. They took it very personally, and I said, don't be insulted. That's kind of that's how you start a negotiation with the stores, and if you do it right, so it's worth the time and the effort. The next thing you need to do, and you need to take it into account, that you need to localize your game. Now, localization is not equal translation. By no means, translation won't get you very fast. It means that actually someone will have to mess with your code. You will have to change the game, and you probably have to make a few other changes within the entire story or the way that the game is being translated to Chinese. For example, here, Fruit Ninja, they added Chinese fruits to the game. Temperan added, I don't know if you can see this, kind of silly customs, kind of more tailored to the Chinese market, so on and so forth. Start with art. We're kind of like realistic arts. Whenever you go to China, this is quite obvious. More of an Eastern feel, manga style, cute and curvy. This is one of my favorite slides. This is taken from last Disney films, Big Hero. And it shows you how the big Hollywood filmmakers actually preparing their titles with Chinese consumers in mind. You can clearly see that all these images are far from what we know in the past from the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s in terms of how the images and the figures look like. Why? Because they think already of the franchise and how the game will be sold on these countries. So that's from an art perspective. Then we talk a little bit about the game flow. You also need to understand that Chinese are very different in the way they consume the game. They are more laid back, for example. So short sessions are kind of the recommendation. They like to custom everything. So if you have customization within your game, provide them as much as you can. And the last one is more related to infrastructure. Remember that you have the Great Wall of China. If you have a game that requires a lot of data, you need to make sure that your servers are actually in China. Otherwise, it won't work. Promotion. That's kind of the typical ratio between paid to organic. Sometimes it goes to 1 to 2. This is what we know from the numbers that we're seeing here. In China, it's much higher. It can go up to 1.1 to 5. But the trick here is that you need to rely on local promotion applications. The most widespread are Widget, QQ, and Weibo. And this is how, again, Fruit Ninja integrated with Widget within this app. So all these, you understand by now that you need to make a very fair amount of work to adapt to the Chinese market, and it takes time. Monetization, last but not least. Chinese, I don't know if anyone been to Beijing. It's a very nosy and crowded place, and this is exactly how the games look like. So monetization is far more aggressive, far more up to events and tournaments, and very tied to the calendar year of events. But at the same time, they're used to it. You need to get their attention and get traction, and that's again part of the game. So the message that I'd like to convey and kind of finish my presentation here is China is kind of a game of 0-1. If you are not ready to make a lot of efforts, so don't waste your time about it and just leave it outside. But if you do want to penetrate this market and they're the ones that actually did it, made a huge return on the investment, so you better go with a local partner or kind of open your own operations within China. And if you want, I can recommend you a few companies that can help you doing it. It's certainly not something that we are doing, but I would love to hook you up with the right people. Hope you enjoy it. See you next year in Tel Aviv. Not next year, actually in October. And thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah. Thank you, Omri. Any questions from the crew here? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk. And so we've heard that you will need to put a lot of effort in, and you get a relatively low rev share. So I imagine there must be some kind of magic number that how your game performs in the Western countries, revenue-wise, so that you can calculate whether it's actually worth the effort, considering that you would have the same amount of success in China.
So that's very individual. I can tell you that Rovia, for example, it took them like 3 years to reach the metrics that they were pointing out to, they were aiming at. And I just had a talk with the founder of Crossy Rider. And what he did, before he launched the game on an international scale, he actually went with another Chinese company. And they already, and they messed up with his code. And they did all this adaptation that I just showed you. And right away, it was also a hit in China. So for me, it's kind of quite hard to give you like the exact benchmark and how you translate it. It's very dependent on the work that you do on your game and the partner that you choose to work with, because there are some failures as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, I echo that. I work with a lot of developers that are moving their product into China, and as part of that, maybe selling their part of their company to Chinese investors or acquirers, and they spend a lot of time doing due diligence on the partners that they're going to be working with to bring the product to China. It's a very, very important thing, and China's not Korea, and China's not Japan.
Definitely.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming.